Good day to you, my dear viewers. Welcome to the Philosophy of Science. In this presentation, I shall be talking about empiricism, or also called sensationalism. Like other philosophical viewpoints, empiricism is one of the most well-known or famous philosophy of all times. Before going further, let's talk about first what this empiricism is. First and foremost, empiricism is a school of epistemology. To say it practically, it is because it talks about knowledge. Secondly, this is a philosophical viewpoint that all knowledge originates from sense experience. It further affirms that experience is of primary importance in giving us knowledge. Therefore, to put them in one concrete definition, empiricism is the school of epistemology, whose philosophical viewpoint is that all knowledge originates from sense experience. Now, since it talks about knowledge from sense experience, therefore, empiricism is contrasted with rationalism, the theory that the mind may apprehend some truths directly without requiring the medium of the senses. Now, let's revisit its history. The early form of empiricism can be traced back from the epistemology of Aristotle and had developed in the Middle Ages, particularly by St. Thomas, as positioning "Nihil in intellectu nisi prius fuerit in sensu," which translated as nothing in the intellect without first being in the senses, and had been developed as early as 11th century by the Persian philosopher Avicenna, who argued that knowledge is attained through empirical familiarity with objects in this world, from which one abstract universal concept which can then be further developed through syllogistic method of the reasoning. The 12th century Arabic philosopher Abu Basir demonstrated the theory of tabula rasa as a thought experiment in which the mind of a feral child develops from a clean state to that of an adult in complete isolation from society on a desert island through experience alone. Sir Francis Bacon can be considered as an early empiricist through his popularization of an inductive methodology for scientific inquiry, which has since become known as the scientific method. In the 7th and 8th century, the members of the British Empiricism School, John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume, were primary exponents of empiricism. They vigorously defended empiricism against the rationalism of Descartes, Leibniz, and Spinoza. The doctrine of empiricism was first explicitly formulated by the British philosopher John Locke. In the late 7th century, Locke argued in his masterpiece, an essay concerning human understanding, that the mind is a tabula rasa, on which experiences leave their marks, and therefore denying that the humans have innate ideas, or that anything is knowable without reference to experience. However, he also held that some knowledge, including the knowledge of God's existence, could be arrived at through intuition and reasoning alone. The Irish philosopher Bishop George Berkeley, concerned that Locke's view opened a door that could lead to eventual atheism, put forth in his treatise concerning the principles of human knowledge, a different, very extreme form of empiricism in which things only exist either as a result of their being perceived or by virtue of the fact that they are in an entity doing the perceiving. He argued that the continued existence of things results from the perception of God, regardless whether they are humans around or not, and any order humans may see in nature is effectively just the handwriting of God. Berkeley's approach to empiricism would later come to be called subjective idealism. The Scottish philosopher David Hume brought to the empiricist viewpoint an extreme skepticism. He argued that all of the human knowledge can be divided into two categories. First is the relations of ideas, propositions involving some contingent observation of the world, such as the sun rises in the east, and the second, the matters of the fact, the mathematical and logical propositions, and that ideas are derived from our impressions or sensations. In the face of this, he argued that even the most basic beliefs about the natural world, or even in the existence of the self, cannot be conclusively established by reason, but we accept them anyway because of their basis in instinct and custom. John Stuart Mill, in the middle of 19th century, took Hume and Berkeley's reasoning a step farther in maintaining that deductive reasoning is necessary for all meaningful knowledge, including mathematics, and that matter is merely the permanent possibility of sensation, as he put it. This is an extreme form of empiricism known as phenomenalism, the view that the physical objects, properties, and events are completely reducible to mental objects. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, several forms of pragmatism arose, which attempted to integrate the apparently mutual exclusive insights of empiricism, that is, experience-based thinking, and rationalism, that is, concept-based of thinking. Charles Sanders Peirce and William James, who coined the term radical empiricism to describe an offshoot of his form of pragmatism, were particularly important in this endeavor. The next step in the development of empiricism was logical empiricism, or logical positivism, an early 20th century attempt to synthesize the essential ideas of British empiricism, a strong emphasis on sensory experience as the basis for knowledge, with certain insights from mathematical logic that had been developed by Gottlob Frege and Bertrand Russell. This resulted in a kind of extreme empiricism, which held that any genuinely synthetic assertion must be reducible to an ultimate assertion, or a set of ultimate assertions, which expresses direct observations or perceptions. Let's look at now the relation of philosophy and science. First and foremost, we have to bear in mind that, as according to Martin Shuttleworth, science cannot exist without philosophy. Philosophy dictates what areas science can and cannot test, delineating the boundary between physical and metaphysical questions. Furthermore, it is because philosophy or empiricism is the cornerstone of scientific method. Why did I say so? Because scientific method defined by, first, empirical or systematic observation, Second, publicly available knowledge. Third, dealing with problems that are solvable and potentially falsifiable. First is that scientific method is defined by empirical observation. We have to know that empiricism, as said a while ago, is an empirical in nature, meaning to say, method of observation and experiment. Accordingly, theories should be based on our observations, rather than intuition, faith, reasoning, or appeals to authority. Secondly, scientific method is defined by publicly available knowledge. Why is it so? If knowledge is not available publicly, it can never be scrutinized, examined, critiqued, or refuted like public knowledge can. That's why we should be wary of anything that has not been studied and published. Lastly, scientific method defined by testable or potentially falsifiable. We have known that falsifiability is good. In fact, it's okay for a theory to be proven wrong. Because of it, we get closer to truth. Science deals with theories that can be tested. The test must be based on spatiotemporal evidence observation, not appeals to the authority and/or theories. We have seen that these three were primarily founded in philosophical viewpoint of empiricism, wherein the central concept is that it must be empirically based on evidence of the senses. And I want to conclude this by giving you the points why empiricism is in relation to science. First is that all ideas are deduced from experience. Second, we can perceive only our own ideas. Third, knowledge consists in perceiving of ideas. Fourth, all significant words stand for ideas. Fifth and last, we have no a priori knowledge of the world. Thank you for watching and listening. This is Seminarian Francis C. Escarda, and this opus is submitted to Reverend Father Ian de la Cruz, Professor of Philosophy of Science. Thank you again.